Hi everyone, this is Richard. Let's talk about electronic medical records. I've mentioned in the past that I'm a family physician and I work in the United States in the state of California. And I started practice back in the 1990s, the late 1990s. And ever since then, I've been fascinated with electronic medical records. And this is something that we use on a daily basis. But I was always fascinated by how crappy they were. Okay, so they were never good in any sense. And when you objectively lay an electronic medical record next to any of them at all, next to any other application, let's just say Google Apps or Facebook or Meta something, or I guess Facebook and Meta the same thing. So any of these apps at all, it really is a stark contrast in terms of quality of apps. And I'll tell you right now, electronic medical records are not the better of the apps, okay? And so, in almost every measurable way. So, for many, many years, I've always had this great interest in learning how to program. And originally, it was so I could work on an electronic medical record. But eventually, it became more of just a hobby in and of itself. But all throughout these decades, I was always interested in making an electronic medical record. And with AI, it is actually possible now for me to create an electronic medical record from the ground up and to make it really, really good, better than anything out there. Will it take time? Yes. But that's not actually my goal. Okay? So, what I want to do in this particular set of videos is go over electronic medical records and see if we can start from the very beginning in terms of what an electronic medical record is and how to make the next generation with AI. Okay? So when I say next generation, I want to do something what we call first principles. First principles is breaking something up from the very fundamental part and starting from there and building up with what we have, with the tools that we have. For example, when the horse and buggy was out, that was everywhere, right? If you wanted to get somewhere, you walked or you used the horse and buggy. But once engines came by, and there were all sorts of engines back then, once engines came by, many people from the very beginning actually wanted to put it on the horse and buggy. And the purpose behind that is, well, the horse might tire out, and so maybe the horse can go a little faster, and maybe it won't tire as quickly, and stuff like that. But so instead of actually taking the horse away and say, let's redesign this thing into, and let's just happen to call it a car, and let's redesign it, put an engine in it, and have it run itself. They simply wanted to strap on new technology into existing technology, and that's all too human. We all do this all the time. But if you go to first principles, that may not have made a lot of sense. And I didn't research this topic very much, but my understanding is it didn't work so well. The horses really did not like it. It freaked them out, and I guess it didn't make for a good horse and buggy and engine or something like that. So let's do that with electronic medical records. But so if we're going to go with that, first of all, we have to ask very simply, what is an electronic medical record? What is our concept of electronic medical record? And I think very simply what it is it's a storage mechanism, right? I have this information on a patient and I store it in a system so I can retrieve it at a given time. Now, we used to do that with papers, right? So we used to have papers of patients. We would have handwritten notes, we would have scanned this and that, and we'd have a bunch of papers, shove it into a big folder, and we carry it around, and that is the history of this particular person, so that if they have any symptoms, or even if they don't, when you're following them, you have the history that you can use to develop the context for making decisions about that person, right? So with electronic medical records, we got that information in a chart, in a paper chart, and we put it in electronics. And there were some very good advantages with that. Number one was consistency, right? So I used to work in an office where we had with papers and in a number of offices, and it really sucked because many times you lost the charts. Most of the time you didn't lose them forever, but you would misplace them. So it would take a little while to find them. You'd find them in a day or two, but you needed it right now. Electronic medical records is not like that. You could share electronic medical records. So instead of sending this chart over to a different clinic, because you worked at a different clinic, you worked at two different offices, you couldn't just ship your chart over. You could just access it through the electronic medical record. So that was really a good help. So there were some very good things that came. There were two good things that came out of getting paper charts and putting them into electronic medical records. But electronic medical records were in a very bad way from the very beginning, just in how they functioned. Okay, so that's in a nutshell what an electronic medical record does. Let's go back into history and talk about electronic medical records from the beginning. This is not a history lesson, just but from the beginning in terms of understanding where we have been and where we will be. By the way, I was actually working on an electronic medical record for a long time, and I wanted to call the electronic medical record zebra hoof. In medicine, okay, it's kind of a joke. In medicine, we always tell people, learn younger physicians, that if you have somebody who has strange symptoms, it's probably a common disease that's just presenting in a strange way, rather than having a strange disease that's presenting in this particular patient. All right, so what we would say is when you hear hooves, think of horses, don't think of zebras. Yes, it could be a zebra, but since we're living in the United States, it's probably a horse that's actually running, and that's what you're hearing. All right, so what the joke was when you think of an electronic medical record, don't think of a typical electronic medical record. Think of this system that's so much superior, right? Because I made it, that's why it's superior. That's so much superior. Don't think of an electronic medical record as being a difficult to use thing. Think of it as being a easy to use thing. So when you think of electronic medical records, think of zebra hoof. All right, so that was just a big joke back then. So I'm able to revive it with AI now, but let's talk about this a little bit more in the next coming up videos, okay? Thanks.